going to do just a voice recording for those of you that may have missed class today, just to remind you about structuring a research paper. I think we may have mentioned it at the beginning of class, but before spring break, but I honestly can't remember because that seems like that was a year ago. I don't know about you, but I forgot that March had 31 days. So really there are two options when it comes to researching or structuring a research paper. There's the typical option, which is one that you're probably more familiar with. It's argumentative. It's more typical of the smaller essays that you may have written in high school or in 1101. The point of an argumentative essay is to establish your frame of view and then essentially try to convince your audience that your perspective is the right one. And because of that, you are framing the entire paper around the text. It's a very narrow focus. You're not as concerned with external research unless it pertains directly to the artifact. So from the intro to the conclusion is about the text or the artifact in that sense. And then the conclusion is where you would look out at larger conversations there. So it's more about you establishing a point. It's less about considering what other people are saying and more about proving a point. And this works for certain essays. But I think the best option is option 2, which assumes that there is no right answer and therefore is more reflective and exploratory. So you're not trying to prove that your perspective is right. You're trying to establish that you A, have a perspective, and that B, that it fits along with other perspectives. So you would start with the conversation. Your actual essay would be framed around the larger discussions. So thinking about your rhetorical process where you were collecting articles that focus on the discussion of the topic at large, rather directly or indirectly. And that could be up to 2 or 3 pages even, where you're just kind of establishing what the conversation is. And that's where you go back and look at those sources, look at the 4 sentences from your rhetorical process and flesh those out, right? Then, after you've established what the conversation is, that's when you get down to your own artifact, where you are spending the second half of the paper analyzing your text or your case study or whatever it is that you found that stands in as an artifact. You're analyzing it as it pertains to the rest of the discussion, right? So you're still not trying to prove anything. You're just saying that this artifact relates to the larger conversation and that you are tying that to the previous conversation. And then your conclusion is, instead of looking out, because you've already done that, the conclusion positions your point clearly, right? Which is where you're kind of establishing why your perspective on the larger conversation matters. So that's the 2 options. I basically think that option 2 will work for everyone's paper. Option 1 may work for just a few of yours. But I think that this one is a little bit less pressure, it's less risk, and can easily be accomplished in the 7 pages.